So tell me a little bit, what led you into the path of discovering arts, and then to where you are now?
Yeah, I've always had this level of curiosity and amazement for folks who I felt carried art in their bodies and in their souls. And um, I really say my craft as an artist has been, for lack of a better description, as a watcher, as a consumer, as someone who absorbs it with my body. And I knew early on that art was and is an important way to for us to express our humanity. It's important as you and I, as art leaders, think about the future, that art is an important part of our city. It's a way to bring people here. It's a way to express the reality of living in Boston, living in New England in this time. And I think it is the music, it's the background, it's the expression of our humanity.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting how you talk about it, because art is really about that interaction. What it says to you, how do you react to it, and there is the bond and the exploration, and it's so vital for the human existence. And in society, it's interesting to see in Europe, art is much more central to everybody's daily life, and in North America it comes from a different angle.
Yes.
And love to just see society in general just be so much more open to it, because everybody is a musician. You have a heartbeat. There's your drum. Your
Yes.
life is just the other instruments to your heart. And so most natural thing for us humans are relate to music and dance, because that's what we are innately. And then in a society today, I mean, I've dedicated my life to the art because my parents were artists. I couldn't escape it from a very young age, but because it can change lives, and it has changed my life. And I wanted to change everybody's life and have an impact in a society, in a society where we live. And that's powerful, and that's meaningful, and that's inspirational. Today there's a lots of new areas that humanity is entering. Our computers and cell phones and the product that is there, and it creates more gaps between individuals. And I see the art being a big part of a self-discovery, and discovering about yourself and your friend and your inner circle, and then the outer circle, the community. So that's what excites me. And the other part is, we all seen so much. We've fallen in love, and then we learn something else. There's still so many things to be discovered. And when I find one of those things I didn't know existed, and it's something so new, and I get to fall in love one more time.
Yes.
And now in my current job, sometimes I get to bring a product to the stage that people have that experience. And that's meaningful, and that's when I'm having the most fun.
Yeah, me too. And what I appreciate, what you just said about art being translated through the eyes of both the creator of the art, but also the person experiencing the art, and this opportunity for us to find ourselves through this natural human expression. It's a part of who we are as beings. How do we've been living through these years, this pandemic. Why do you think art, now more than ever has been something that we've been longing for? Like, why is this human connection so important?
Well, I think the whole pandemic made everybody take a breath, slow down, listen to themselves. And the answers are there. And we just have to listen to that. And I think if anything, you know, like art is a stimulant. It's not the end product, because I think the power is in the dialogue, but I want to validate the person who's having the dialogue with themselves.
Yes.
And that's amazing stuff, because even literature, it's written word, it tells you a story, but it doesn't tell you how to feel about it. That's where you bring your emotions into it and your interpretation of it. And for me, that interpretation is the single most valid thing.
Yeah, and I think this sitting still in the moment, you know, the technology, and I love it myself. I'm using it every day. Sometimes I feel naked without my handheld, but I also think it's created so much noise so that we can't take the time to listen to ourselves, so that we can't hear ourselves, because we're inundated with other things, other stimulants that distract us from connection. And so I think if there's any ounce of silver lining during this pandemic, I think you hit the nail on the head. Is this opportunity, small opportunity, in ways that, you know, some folks have been able to have more than others, to just be still and to hear and to see and to get in touch with our humanity.
You know, and I often say that our art form, I don't want to be a museum, I don't want to be a church, definitely don't want to be a government, and I want to be a living theater for today's
Yes.
people. So what does it mean, together we move? Because, you know, it's individuals, organizations, communities. I don't know, maybe it's bridges, building bridges, partners, working together, hearing from each other, learning, and creating a space for things to happen.
Yeah, and I think moving together is like a rainbow. It's a spectrum. It's you know, in a former life I was a dental hygienist. Did I tell you this?
No.
I have a bad habit of like looking at people's teeth when they talk. So I've been trying to look you in the eyes, and
I'll try to keep my mouth closed.
right. That's what happens when I tell people that. They start smiling differently. But together we move is like a spectrum. It's like fluoride in the water to Crest whitening toothpaste. It's about accepting people where they are on the spectrum, but including them. And some people have to be included, like fluoride in the water. It just happens in the background and they get the benefit of it. And there's some of us that are zealots that brush our teeth 3 times a day with all the toothpaste and kind of gargle it out, right? And so I think moving together feels like this full spectrum of acceptance, and not canceling people. Like, we're not going to cancel people out of change. We're not going to cancel people out of empathy. It's bringing people along, and it's the terrible but wonderful responsibility of leadership, is that you and I and others in these roles have the wonderful, terrible, beautiful opportunity to see the spectrum and bring people together at whatever level, and really this kind of humanistic hygiene that we are stewards of. To me, that's what moving together is. And so, you know, hopefully we can convince or trick or get different stewards, docents, to help us do this work. And there are more of us that are converted into empathy and understanding the spectrum. I think that the easier it's going to be, especially at a time like this, where the world and the country is so polarized, and there's got to be a moment where we draw a line in the sand and say that these ancient boundaries and borders and culture that has kept us separate are just not worth it. Like, human beings created this language, they created these conditions. We can uncreate and create something new. The arts are about creating that new every single day.
Yeah. So it's like we're saying, come join the journey. Come, enough of swimming the rivers upstream. Let's swim downstream, and everybody's welcome, and
yes,
let's move forward
together.
Exactly. It's interesting, you know, when you think, when I came to Boston, you know, people told me what kind of art Boston consumes. you can do this, they like this, they like that, but you can't do this. And it was very fascinating because I didn't buy it. I wanted to buy a little mileage on being naive guy from outside, so I can do all these stupid things. But I needed to make change and quick change.
Yes.
So, but I found that people were incredibly receptive when you put something in front of them. And I believe it's not about educating your audiences, it's about exposure. I always felt art is non-political. I was brought up like that. But I have to say, having seen so many issues that in this country has not been dealt with, put under the rug, and just like lots of ugly stuff, really ugly stuff. And the pandemic at the same time, and I just said, I don't see the inspiration, the message to the right direction from sources that I would expect it to come. And I changed my perspective on what art should be for an organization like us. And I want to take a bigger sort of a stab at bringing some issues into light, and then bringing hope and opportunity around that. And it's I'm very excited about it, and I know there's not only room and climate, but that's where the oxygen is right now.
Yes. Across the country, we've been having dialogues and discourse about monuments and memorials. In Boston, we're building this, memorial for Dr. and Mrs. King. But this idea that these statues, the names of buildings, there's 240 schools in America named after Confederate generals. There's over 430 statues named after Confederate generals. This art in public spheres, in public places, has been the type of propaganda for some in America's past, in this kind of wicked nostalgia, to impose a will and a value and a story. And I think the idea casters in Boston have an opportunity to impose a different story, different values through music, through dance, through visual arts, through films, to paint a different picture of Boston, one that I think folks who are visitors and residents are resonating right now. And so, I know that I'm super excited about the way in which the ballet has led to this moment. It feels like it's the ballet's moment to once again lead the country, to show the world how an institution and how this dance form can be a people's dance form, how monuments and memorials can represent the values of our time today. So I'm excited that you and I are friends and allies in this work, and our institutions are 120% leaning into this future.
Oh, I'm thrilled about this, and this is just the beginning. But you're so right. The stories that need to be heard, and we are writing the script of the future, and you're a game changer. You're changing how Boston looks at things, and there's a huge momentum behind it. And even in that, I believe it's still just the beginning. And I'm excited about future and see what the journey is like.
Yeah, and this idea, at least in the work that we're doing around this public monument, it's not just a memorial to Dr. King, it's a memorial to Dr. and Mrs. King. And everyone would say, yeah, I've seen Mrs. King in photographs. I know who she is, but she's really a hidden figure in this work. And I think this is a time where we're in a moment where hidden figures are emerging, that they are being illuminated, they're being brought to the forefront. I think the pieces that you're doing over the next month, the two important pieces, I think they're raising up these hidden figures, dancers who've been there, who've been doing the work, who've been engaged in this work, but hadn't had their opportunity to be up front, right? And so this is the moment where Um, I think we're asking, the public is asking to see themselves, right, to be connected in the art, in the arts. It's a language. The arts and humanities have been a language in which we've been expressing ourselves. So the timing couldn't be any better than now.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's about, there's the art, there's the opportunity, and then there's the purpose. Why? And the why really brings people into it. People want to be part of something.
Boston's been a city where, again, not all of our histories have been told. And across the country, we're a storytelling city, right? Whether we like it or not. The Boston Tea Party, the Freedom Trail, Americans and people from around the world come to Boston to get their American story reified, right? To get it reinforced through hearing about Oneth by land, Twoeth by sea, walking through these old historic streets, hearing about the American Revolutionary War. And Boston has an opportunity to elevate other voices who were here, that were a part of that time, to tell a different American story. And that's the power of the arts and humanities, is that that we can continue, and you said this earlier, continue to redefine and re-examine stories and make them more inclusive, and have folks resonate with these stories, with art, with these places in ways that they may have not have done 5 years ago. And it could be the same thing, right? And so our own sense of aging and self redefines how we see something that hasn't changed at all. It's that we're the ones who've changed, right? And the piece might have stayed the same, and so our interpretation of what we're seeing has changed. And I think that's the exciting part about Boston, because America can change because Boston can change. And if we can demonstrate that change, and we can tell a more inclusive story, and we can tell a story that invites folks to participate in holidays like the MLK holiday, or on Juneteenth, we can define how America might celebrate Juneteenth in the future, right? It's a brand new holiday. How does one dig into humanity? How does one celebrate a holiday with empathy? How does one celebrate a different culture? And so the arts are also a place in which we socialize behavior, socialize ways of being. And so I don't know, sometimes people say I'm like blindly optimistic. I'm super optimistic. Everything is not going well in the world. I'm super optimistic about our city and what's happening right now.
It's one of the oldest places of what we consider America.
Yes.
And it's what better than try to lead the future of change.